Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, closing the book on another basketball season, but opening another for a coaching carousel season. To pucker up or not to pucker up? Next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to be with you on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts with the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you once again, my man. We are back into football coming up today. We've been talking a lot about one side of the trenches, that being the offensive line, and we're going to flip to the other side today and hear from Zarnell Fitch, defensive line coach, who has got a big job on his hands, just like Clay McGuire does on the offensive side, filling some big shoes. And we'll get into some of those who have gotten his attention so far. And also want to kick off our conversation today, Chris, on a basketball front as we sort of close the book on this basketball calendar. We've now got a national champion in the form once again of the UConn Huskies. And I think, you leave Texas Tech season, Chris, and you're thinking, man, I liked a lot about what we got out of Grant McCasland in year one, what we got out of the Red Raiders. And we know we've got to get better. We've got to improve the roster. And then you watch a game like what you saw last night and you're seeing the guys that are involved there and you're thinking, we've got to get a lot better. We've got to really improve the roster, man. When you see some of the talent, some of the size and athleticism that's on display, when you're talking national title caliber, I don't know about you, but it was just a reminder to me of what that really takes and what Texas Tech is going to really have to do if you hope to ever get back into that kind of conversation.
Yeah, kind of an anticlimactic result there with who wins the tournament. What is that? That is 12 NCAA tournament wins in a row by double digits. Insane. So they rolled through last year's tournament and this year's tournament and never didn't win by double digits. It is insane. And they beat the who's who. It wasn't like they got an easy path and were playing all the teams that had won upsets and things like that. No, this is extremely impressive, and there's an old school feel to it, and it's I think developed veteran is a good phrase to use with what they have. They're very careful with the portal, and it's just hard to win with young players in this day and age, man. Because the who's who, and then you look at Purdue's roster, same deal. They're old. They had some years together. There was some patience shown, and it didn't ultimately pay off, but they do get to the near the top of the mountain. Red Raider fans can certainly empathize with what Purdue went through or is going through right now. But it's a UConn deal, and that's their sixth national title since 1999. There is a lot of folks, so call them a blue blood, call them a new blood, call them whatever, but you're going to call them one of the best that there is because they are in a different category now than a lot of these schools that I think talk about the whole blue blood thing. And they've done it in different eras too. You've done it in portal era. You've done it in, some different things. And it's just, Danny Hurley, man. I know he's not likable to a lot of people. He's kind of crazy and fiery and all those things, but man, he's impressive.
Bet they like him in Storrs, Connecticut. If he's your guy, I bet you like him a whole hell of a lot. And that maintains also the Big Ten's drought. Have not had a national title winner since 2000. So working on 24, 25 years now. I think Michigan State was the last one that has held up that trophy for whatever that is worth. But yeah, just really eye-opening to remind yourself about what it takes from a roster standpoint to compete on that level. And of course, what you need, obviously, just from a mojo or momentum standpoint at the right time of the year to be able to put on a run like that. Certainly impressive. And, while we still sit here looking to the future as far as rebuilding a Texas Tech roster and what we're going to get out of year number 2 from Grant McCasland, The entry into the offseason has gotten a hell of a lot more interesting, Chris, because of the coaching carousel that's gone on. And it all started with firing some bum at SMU, I guess, is where you kind of trace the roots back to. And yada, 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 the crab bisque and whatnot later, you get Calipari going to Fayetteville, Arkansas. And now you're getting some names mentioned as far as a Kentucky opening is concerned. And when there is one of those names that's featured prominently that is in your state, in your league in the form of Scott Drew, and would be potentially, if it happens, leaving a program that has a tie to your head coach, things get a heck of a lot more interesting. So this may just be some fan puckering up I got going on here, but my ears are perked. The antenna is certainly up to kind of see how this plays out, and if anything winds up hitting close to home.
You forgot the best part. I mentioned the bisque. Mentioned the bisque. Yeah. That's good stuff. Rob Lanier in his 20-win season wasn't good enough for SMU, and now, it's caused this ripple effect. Andy Enfield leaves USC. Eric Musselman leaves Arkansas. John Calipari leaves Kentucky. And it's this, anytime Kentucky starts poking and prodding around and looking for a higher, that they are one of those programs that that they can realistically reel in whoever anybody would suggest, whether it's tradition, money, interest, combination of those things. And you're right. You've seen Scott Drew's name mentioned a lot. You saw Nate Oates at Alabama, who was also in the Final Four this year, mentioned prominently. He already has come out and said, "Nope, I'm good. I've shot it down. I look forward to trying to win a national championship here in Tuscaloosa, and I'm glad to be your head coach. Roll Tide," all that stuff. I mean, Billy Donovan and all that. But, if something happens here within the Big 12, it could continue the ripple effect. I think I don't know what Scott Drew would do. I really don't. I think, the Louisville thing didn't make any sense to me. Whenever that was – and he was supposedly very intrigued there. I think some will tell you that he was maybe trying to just solidify his situation in Waco from an NIL standpoint and try to not really look to leave, but kind of, leverage his situation. I guess that's the best way to phrase it. It's got a brand new building and all that. But again, this is Kentucky. It's a different, it is so if depending on what they do, if it's anybody from the Big 12, it could maintain the ripple effect. You just don't know.
This is Ashley Judd we're talking about. This is a whole different conversation.
I sat this is a true story. The first time Tubby Smith won a national championship at Kentucky, they beat University of Utah and Rick Majerus. It was in San Antonio. In the Alamo Dome. Ashley Judd was about 20 rows in front of me with her pom-poms on. And this is back in Cowan, would it have been 99, 2000, somewhere in there? So it's a ways ago, but that was peak Kentucky fandom for Ashley Judd then, man. I was well aware of who she was. Yes.
I imagine so.
Go Cats, go Blue.
That was prime Ashley Judd territory. As well. And I guess, just glad that seeing all this about Arkansas's NIL budget and what they have to offer and what Calipari might have liked about that. I'm just glad to hear that he's finally got some resources he can work with. He's probably tired of leading these impoverished programs Kentucky. So good for him. Am I being a little too quick to draw on a paranoia trigger as it relates to our guy here in Lubbock and Grant McCaslin? And I know that you can't get in his shoes or get in his mind necessarily, but there are obvious ties. If there is an opening up in Waco, I think certainly a Tech fan would be sort of naive to not at least consider the possibility he'd be a guy high on that list and maybe a guy that would listen.
Yeah, I think we're way ahead of ourselves there, but sure, you have to consider it or think about. I know this has been everywhere, right? I've been texted about it. I don't know. I would say probably over a dozen times. Hey,
I'm sorry. If you'd answered the first one, I wouldn't have sent the other 11.
Yeah, no,
That's
not for one
me.
person. Yeah, for all different people. Yeah, I mean, again, and it goes back to like, Kentucky can pull. They can do some things that most programs wouldn't have the sway to be able to do. And I will say this, I do think that the John Calipari to Arkansas, hire has a lot of A&M hiring Jimbo Fisher feel to it. I don't know if it ultimately will work. Arkansas has to feel pretty good. They got a monster name. He's going to be well paid. They're going to win. There's not as much pressure at Arkansas or anywhere near it compared to Kentucky. But that's, mark me down as somebody that don't think that will ultimately pan out like maybe everybody would hope. So we'll see if, he's 65 years old too. This is it's very Jimbo-esque, man. I mean, I really do feel that way. But it's just fair to, and this is what sports talk radio podcasts, this is why they exist, is like to talk out theories and talk out, and to speculate. Some people don't grasp that. It's like you're dense and don't understand that there's some dots that need to be connected, and you're really not trying to connect them. But it's like, this is what, people enjoy listening to these kinds of things. And yet I don't know if we're there yet. But you would be naive. You're right. If Baylor were to open, I mean, you'd be like, okay, yes. I mean, that's really the only, for your current head coach, that's really the only one that you would go, it's probably kind of like Beard in Texas, honestly. I just don't know if there was any other one that he was like, and I think there was some talk about like the North Carolinas and some of those things at some point, but the alma mater for some folks, it's a bit different. So, but Grant has a degree from Texas Tech as well. So
that's right. So hopefully the red.
So leave him alone. And Scott Drew may tell Kentucky, like, I don't want to mess with that silliness. Y'all are crazy. I've got a great thing. I've got NBA guys rolling through here. I got a brand new building. Right. We're in a monster league. I don't need all that. So
want it all. Want as much as you possibly can. I mean, you want to talk about made in the shade with, double fist and Kool-Aid or whatever. I think you're talking about that situation. And before we move on, speaking of not being able to grasp something, John Calipari walking a dog with a baby stroller. Not something I'm grasping. And if I was the Arkansas AD or Mr. Tyson Chicken or whoever's making this decision, I may have just rescinded the offer right on the spot. If I see a grown man walking a lap dog with a baby stroller. So did you see the video of Calipari strolling through the neighborhood?
I did.
You ever watch your dog with a baby stroller, Chris? Am I stepping on toes?
I don't understand what was going on there. Like fully with the push cart, and he's like, "Come on, Fred. Come on, Fred. Like Fred, come on. Okay, no, we're good, man. Mr. Reporter guy, appreciate it. Come on, Fred."
That was just bizarre.
The first mistake though is what in the heck is he doing in Lexington, Kentucky, leaving his house,
right? Like,
and not in a car with tinted windows.
It seemed like staged, like they had to show he was alive.
I agree. I was like, because if you're the reporter guy and you're in Lexington, this is like the Holy Grail.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, oh, there he is. I mean, like, wonder if he'll say anything to us. And like to get whatever, on that day, it's like a day, Arkansas Day, I guess, or whatever you want to phrase it. I mean, it was like the day that this was going down, and he's just out chilling, strolling. Come on, Fred.
Strolling.
Come on, Fred.
They see me. Hey.
That's right.
Strolling dirty with Fred. All right, well, we'll see how that thing continues to spin. Hopefully not too close to home, but keep your head on a swivel because there's no telling what could happen as we now live in a world where a Kentucky head coach left to go to Fayetteville, Arkansas. So something to process there. A couple other things to process in today's conversation. Want to get to Joey McGuire's football program. First, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, and say adios to busted brackets, because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tournament. Whether you're betting on a big upset, a 1 seed, or anything in between, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines, overs, unders. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. With FanDuel, trench work makes the dream work, Chris. I think we all now know that. Both sides of the ball. We've spent a lot of time focusing in so far this spring camp on the offensive side of things. You got a new position coach there, and obviously really trying to bring that group along so you can bring your program along. And somewhat similar conversation on the defensive side of things is you lose some stalwarts and guys like Jalen Hutchings and Tony Bradford. You're trying to fill some big shoes, and that's led to a lot of competition, obviously, in that room. And I want to take a listen to defensive line coach Zarnell Fitch on some of that competition, some of the guys that have stood out. Here is Coach Fitch.
When you have that room competing, it's our room is a lot about, toughness and grit and, being a true, effort-based team. When the competition level is that high, you see guys keep taking it up a notch. And I think that's, I always tell people, if we're not good, we're not good. And we got to be good. So really excited about it.
I love that. And he's speaking the truth. If we're not good, we're not good, because, like I said, those trench departments are what spins the wheel in large part. So I think he's speaking the truth there.
It's like it is what it is. Yeah, and it may take you a second to understand what he's saying. If we are not good, meaning his room, then we're like the team is not good. That's what he's saying ultimately. But I love me some Z, man. Zarnell is like, he just kind of straight shooter. He's country. He gets after those guys. And I'm sure that more than most this spring, he's probably had eye-popping moments from the standpoint of, since he's been here, and I feel like since Ronald Reagan was president, Tony Bradford and Jalen Hutchings were just like pinned into the interior of that D-line, and it's like one less thing you have to worry about. You can worry about the depth there and other stuff, but it was just like, we're good there. Let's worry about everything else. And now, not so much. Now you've got some new pieces, and this position group too is very similar to. You mentioned the trench work, and that's why we talked about the offensive line so much in yesterday and in recent weeks and things like that. But it's the same similarity in that they have added some senior additions just to try to bridge the gap, because they don't want to heavily lean on all of their young players just yet. They're trying to just give them more time in the oven. Let the cake bake a little bit. And that's why, James Hanson to Braylon Carroll are two guys that are just one-year guys from Nevada and from Rice that are just here to kind of, help you as much as you can, and then try to, bridge that gap a little bit for some of those younger guys.
Let's get into some of those individuals, and you mentioned one of them there, but want to get into some of these that are standing out to him. A couple of guys, or a trio of guys, that he'll talk about first. Duda Banks, Quincy Ledet, and Trayvon McAlpine. Here again is Coach Fitch.
Duda, from the first day we got here to now, it's unbelievable. And you just need to keep taking strides. We talk about getting 1% better, and you definitely see him, that out of him. He's switching his number to 8 next year. And I think I just see him just growing, and just developing, not only as a player, but as a leader in the room. Quincy, it was called, he's playing probably his best ball, but our whole standpoint is like, just keep taking the proper steps. So when we line up in the fall, we're the unit that we want to be. Trey is a very explosive kid, he's everything that we thought when, we brought him here. What I like about Trey is Trey really doesn't understand it, and me getting him to understand the player he can be. And he's taking strides, don't get me wrong. He's been going to 1s, 2s, and keeping that group rotating a lot.
And another guy he was asked about and talked about was the one you just mentioned, the newcomer from Rice and Braylon Carroll.
Brings some maturity. It got him, again, played a lot of snaps, bringing that maturity to the room, learning our system, learning new techniques. But what I love about that kid, he brings an attitude to the group too. Been knowing him for a long time, from high school and, from the process, from, him being at Dunkerville and stuff like that. And I'm glad that we got him. He's going to be really good for us.
I know we'll have some other contributors emerge, Chris, but what do you make of that collection of 4 that he highlighted there?
I think Quincy Ledet is, one of the guys that you say, okay, he's a starter. I mean, he's kind of been a top rotational guy and spot started at times for Jalen and Tony. But he was kind of on an island after graduation and all these other things. That's why, you see Hansen and Carroll brought in here just to add some, like what he says, maturity, experience, snaps.
Attitude.
In an attitude.
I like that also.
And there's just something about, because I think Carroll is somebody that's, from the Metroplex, and he's obviously played at Rice. But there's just something about guys that have been in a weight room for 4 to 5 years. They've got a bunch of snaps under their belt, and they can, that's the hardest thing I think for coaches these days right now. And the 2 sports that we talk a lot about here is like the culture thing. How do we want our young guys to play when we don't have any older guys around to show them, and now everybody leaves or moves out. And so you're very careful about the older guys you bring in, because if they're not the right kinds of guys, your younger guys are looking up at them going, oh, okay, so I can, slack off. I can take reps off. I can, pretend like I'm hurt and get out of practice, whatever. And so they're very careful about the guys that they bring in from an older standpoint in a lot of these sports, because that's your culture. And I think that there's a reason why Braylon Carroll was kind of checked a lot of boxes there, because I think he's the right kind of guy and he's got an edge to him. And they probably need that, if we're being honest. They need some of that. But if we're not good, we're not good.
I'm kind of curious about, there's some interior work we're talking about there, but also curious about some, como se dice, kill the quarterback work, to use an industry term. And Coach Fitch also commented on that, talking about leading the Big 12 from a sack standpoint, I think, then drop it back to maybe 3rd or 4th. And he jokingly said, what's the difference? Is that all Tyree or is it something else? But either way, they want to be making some more noise in that area. Do you think they have a chance to, or is it going to be kind of a long, slow build to try to get back to that type of category?
Yeah, I mean, that is the one position that, we always get asked these questions in like over the years. If you could give this team one thing, what would it be? And all those kinds of dynamics. And more often than not, you really go to, like the twitchy edge rusher guy, because your team just doesn't have it. Tyree brought it to you. I mean, I'd go back to like Brandon Sharp, Brandon Williams. I'm trying to think of some of the guys over the years that you've kind of had that have got into that have been big time, like sack, disruptive types. And it's not near as many as you would like to, Keontae Dawson back in the day, Monte Rager, and those are hard to find. I mean, like, why was ultimately Texas so successful this year in years past? A lot of it had to do with what they had up front on the defensive line. Mm-hmm. And it was very different than a lot of years previous, to where they've got all this other stuff going on, but they just aren't, and I think that's what, separated them. And I think that when Texas Tech has been really good, you've kind of had an answer there. So I'm not prepared to tell you have that player right now. I think that you hope, now we're getting out of, Zarnell's position group here, but like, can Dylan Spencer turn himself into somebody like that? Can Isaac Smith turn himself into something like that, to where they're just, can Amir Washington, who probably was in a Zarnell's group last year, and then they've kind of moved him to the edge a bit. He's playing for Coach IU now, and he had the 3 sacks in the bowl game. I mean, there's some possibilities, certainly, but it's a matter of when it counts and when it matters, and when it's 3rd and 8, and you're on the road and you got to get a stop and force a punt. Can you get to that quarterback? That's and Tyree Wilson certainly impacted the game in a variety of different ways that doesn't show up in the stat sheet. You were hopeful that Miles Cole would do more of that. Don't know if that ever ultimately materialized, but I don't know if we've got that. But you need to be better there. It would help the takeaway category immensely if you could create some pressure in the backfield for sure.
Kind of strange to see how the script is flipped as far as anticipating what you got or what you feel like you don't have defensively from a year ago to now, because we were asking a lot of questions about your group of linebackers going into last season.
Yeah.
And now you're going into this season kind of, I guess they're immune as far as the group that you're asking questions about, and you're asking questions about a lot of those all around them, because you got a lot of shoes to fill, because we can have this same kind of conversation on the back end of that defense as well. So I think it's a big challenge and a tall task, obviously, for Tim DeRuyter, but glad to have a guy like Tim DeRuyter, I think, leading that charge, because he's seen, I don't know, everything under the college football sun, or almost everything under the college football sun.
It's funny you mentioned that. I had lots of questions too. You mentioned the questions about all these positions, like this eclipse yesterday.
Yeah.
Solar or lunar, and we just had one recently. We talked about this. It's like the world was fascinated by this little phenomenon, and I don't know about you. A bit overrated.
Extremely
underwhelming.
I'm just gonna say my expectations were misplaced. They were misguided.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of videos of like some of the stuff where like literally just got dark in places. I guess I was, probably not well read enough. Didn't pay attention in astronomy class. Shoot me, sorry. I should have read up on it. I mean, everything from this ain't no big deal. The government's up to something today. I mean, they got everybody. Paying, not paying attention. It's the heist of the century. Who knows? I don't know. But
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, under the sun, I thought was a great way to phrase it. And you're like, I got questions about. I had questions about yesterday too. I was like, kind of like, okay,
We didn't have the approved glasses, so I don't know. I was just out there looking.
And you can screw yourself up. You can come away blind on this deal if you.
See, now I was trying to get back right, because I'm already coming into it pretty screwed up. I'm trying to go like cousin Eddie's daughter gets kicked by a mule again.
The best thing,
I don't know. So I was trying to correct it.
Like kick that lazy eye back straight.
Yeah.
I
did enjoy coming home and seeing at lunch, trying to watch it, and finding my wife on the back patio looking like Ray Charles with just some bum ass roadside dark glasses. They were not approved, issued either.
The best thing I saw was like the white piece of paper and then like the note card.
Yes,
and you know what I'm talking about.
Was it?
And you poke the hole in the like the small deal, and then you get where the sun is like behind you, and it basically, instead of looking at it, it's kind of. But then I'm just looking at this like eclipse on notebook paper, and I'm watching it. I'm like, well, this isn't.
That seems like you're just looking at your tablet, right? Be where your feet are. Quit looking at pieces of paper during a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse or whatever we had going on. I don't know. Maybe 375 years from now, I'll catch the next one and maybe be a little bit more impressed by it. But I was just thinking Jimi Hendrix. I saw a lot of haze. Is about all I saw while it was going down. So if you enjoyed it out there, good for you. And some of you,
some bum Ray Charles glasses. I love that. That's solid work. That is solid work. Yeah.
I know she's had them for a while and could never see anything out of them because they're so damn dark. And so I guess we thought this will be a good one to pull out.
Sure.
And, we both tried them, and I convinced myself that when I squinted, I could see something. She wasn't buying it, and then we just both went on with our days. So if you were in the path of totality, please let us know in the YouTube comments whether or not you gained any newfound powers, anything like that. Can you see the future? Do you have any questions or answers to questions that have been unknown for all of the entirety of civilization. Will we have a pass rush? If you can see the future, please let us know that first, and how it's going to go down with this coaching carousel. So
the whole thing choked me up.
That's
sorry.
right.
Yeah, I mean, it's like
a little lunar dust.
I'm like, oh man, it just choked me up. Yeah.
Enjoyed it all as always, Chris. Good stuff as always, man. And we'll be back on the other side to do it again. Appreciate the time.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
Make sure you're subscribed out there on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. Thanks for being there, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.